Working late, when everyone else is asleep, is already enough to play tricks on your mind. But for some people, the quiet hours of the night aren't just lonely, they are dangerous. These are 3 true, disturbing stories from people who experienced absolute terror while working the graveyard shift. This first story comes from a listener who worked alone at a 24-hour gas station located right off a desolate stretch of highway in rural Ohio back in 2021. Working the night shift alone always had an eerie vibe. At around 2:15 in the morning, the automatic sliding doors would usually stay completely shut for hours. The only sounds inside the store were the low, rhythmic hum of the beverage coolers and the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. To pass the time, I usually stocked the snack shelves or listened to podcasts with one earbud in, keeping an eye on the front register and the live security monitor. At exactly 3:12 a.m., the motion sensor chime above the front doors let out a short, high-pitched ping. I looked up instantly, expecting to see a tired trucker or a college student grabbing an energy drink, but the front walkway was completely empty. The sliding doors hadn't opened. I figured it was just a technical glitch. Sometimes heavy wind outside, or a stray bug, sets off the infrared sensor. I went back to unboxing a shipment of chips, shaking it off, but 2 minutes later, the chime rang again. Ping. This time, I walked out from behind the counter to check the aisle mirrors. The store was dead silent. I stepped toward the glass doors and looked out into the pitch-black parking lot. Parked right near the outermost edge of the overhead lights was an older, beat-up sedan with its headlights off. No one was stepping out of it. Suddenly, a heavy, muffled bang echoed from the back storage door, the heavy metal door that delivery drivers use, located down a dark corridor past the restrooms. My stomach dropped. Delivery trucks never came at 3:15 in the morning. I locked the front register counter, grabbed the heavy metal flashlight from under the desk, and crept down the narrow hallway toward the back exit. The pounding happened again. Thud, 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 much louder this time, accompanied by a raspy, distorted voice, shouting something completely unintelligible through the steel door. I froze, pressing my back against the drywall, heart hammering so hard I thought it would echo down the hall. I slowly peered through the small wire mesh window built into the door. Standing right outside in the dark, pressed so close to the glass that I could only see a pair of wide, bloodshot eyes illuminated by the emergency exit light, was a man. He wasn't trying to break the lock with a tool. He was deliberately scratching his fingernails down the metal pane in a slow, agonizing rhythm. Before I could even back away, he whispered right against the door seams, "I know you're in there alone. Just open it." I sprinted back to the front counter, locked the interior security gate that separated the cash register area from the main floor, and immediately dialed 911. It felt like hours before the distant sirens finally echoed down the highway, and by the time the police arrived and swept the perimeter, the old sedan was gone, leaving nothing behind in the empty parking lot. This second story comes from a listener who worked as a remote infrastructure technician in rural Montana back in late 2022. My job was to monitor and occasionally perform routine maintenance on automated relay towers scattered deep in the mountains. Most nights were completely uneventful. I would drive my truck up narrow, unpaved logging roads, check the server diagnostics, and head back down. On a freezing night in November, I got an automated alert at 1:30 a.m., indicating a primary signal failure at Relay Station 4, a concrete bunker situated at the dead end of an isolated ridge, surrounded by miles of dense pine trees. I hated going out to Station 4 after dark. There was no cell service up there, and the access road was so narrow that turning the truck around was a nightmare. But maintenance protocols required an in-person check if the automated reboot failed. I arrived around 2:10 a.m. The station was a heavy concrete building with a single steel door and a chain link fence topped with barbed wire surrounding the perimeter. As I pulled up, My truck's high beam swept across the front gate. Something immediately looked wrong. The heavy steel access gate, which was supposed to be padlocked shut, was standing wide open, swinging slightly in the freezing wind. I sat in the idling truck for a moment, my hand resting on the steering wheel, debating whether to call it in or check it out. I figured a local hiker or vandals might have cut the chain. I grabbed my high-powered industrial flashlight, stepped out into the biting cold, and walked through the open gate. The hum of the massive cooling fans inside the bunker was deafening, vibrating through the ground. I walked up to the main steel door. It wasn't just unlocked. It was pushed slightly ajar, leaving a dark gap about 6 inches wide. I called out into the dark entryway, thinking maybe a fellow technician had been dispatched ahead of me. "Hello? Is someone inside?" No voice answered. But right as my voice faded, the loud humming sound of the cooling fan suddenly cut out, plunging the entire clearing into an eerie, dead silence. My chest tightened. Those fans didn't shut down unless the main breaker tripped, or someone manually hit the emergency kill switch inside the control room. I pushed the heavy door open further, stepping cautiously into the pitch-black corridor. I swept my flashlight beam down the narrow hallway toward the server racks. That's when I saw him, standing motionless in the middle of the control room, with his back turned directly toward me, was a tall man wearing a heavy winter parka. But he wasn't looking at the servers. He was standing directly in front of the emergency communication console, slowly dragging his bare hand across the keyboard in a rhythmic, useless motion. Before I could back away, the man stopped moving. Without turning his body around, his head snapped backward over his shoulder at an impossible, unnatural angle, staring straight at me with pitch-black eyes in the flashlight beam. He didn't speak. He just let out a low, rattling wheeze that echoed off the concrete walls. I didn't think twice. I turned, sprinted out of the bunker, scrambled back into my truck, and slammed the accelerator in reverse. So fast I nearly ditched the vehicle off the side of the mountain. I drove all the way down to the nearest highway patrol station before I finally stopped shaking.